coastal environments are dynamic places. There's wave action. In this case, we're not on an ocean, but we're on a lake, and the lake is undergoing these sort of historically unusual fluctuations. It's historically high, which is not in itself necessarily a bad thing, but certainly on the coast, you combine that dynamic action of the lake level with wave action. It's a changing place.
Anytime we get a storm or like strong winds that come off the lake, huge waves are battering the shoreline, crashing into, whatever shoreline infrastructure we have. So over time, it's destroying what's called a revetment system, which is basically a big pile of rocks that we have lining the shoreline. It's slowly breaking those rocks apart and moving them around and destabilizing them, undermining them, because these waves are so big and so powerful.
The issue is that we have built a lot of infrastructure on the shoreline all the way around the city of Chicago. It's all artificial shoreline. And of course, we use it for recreational facilities. You have buildings built on the shoreline. And so we have infrastructure, like things we've built, put into a region of natural variability, and it's causing problems for the things we built.
The city, they approached us about a year ago. They were concerned about the high lake level. They were concerned about the potential for damage. There had been, a couple of storms that had, created some flooding and some issues. And so they were initially just like, we don't really know the magnitude of the problem that we're facing.
It's really in very small portions of our overall lakefront. So they're kind of running into these little spots, and they're either kind of rebuilding revetment or readjusting some of the rocks, or they're adding these kind of really large temporary flood barriers. They look like giant sandbags to try to kind of contain the water on the lakeside and hold the shoreline.
The primary areas that we were concerned about were the places where the city has, buildings, facilities. So there's a comfort station, washroom type facilities.
Engineers like me, our first concern is to make sure that people are safe and that you don't have a big movement of soil, a landslide that would cause destruction, but more importantly, cause potentially loss of life. The second concern is serviceability. Does it do what it needs to do? That's not a safety concern, but certainly if you have a building that's adjacent to the coastline and it starts to settle and you start to get cracks in the building, and now that's a problem. Somebody, if eventually the building, might need to be repaired. It's unsightly.
At Greenwood Beach, that was an area that we were very sort of concerned about. The existing revetment had been, very heavily damaged there. It's also a place that's really important for the programming. So that was one which was like very highly used, and also was kind of in a somewhat sort of dangerous sort of condition. At Dempster, the city also has a facility there, which is very, very close to the lake. And again, the revetment there had been, very heavily damaged. It was relatively short length, but it was quite obviously, gotten to the end of its kind of useful life. At Elliott Park, that area was repeatedly flooded last winter. And the issue there was that there was a lot of the revetment, there were a lot of gaps in it. So it didn't take much for the water to kind of come up and through that revetment. And then the park is kind of just sort of shaped like a big bowl, and it just gets a lot of water. At the very south of the city at Garden Park, there was a lot of investment made recently in a new play area there that's very, very, heavily used in that little particular sort of neighborhood. And most of that revetment was in really good shape, but we wanted to make sure that the investment in the park was, then protected. And I think having done the piece of work that we've done at the north end of that park, they won't need to go back in there for a long time.
The city's committed to being cognizant of these issues and doing their part, whatever we can do to try to participate in solving these problems. I think Evanston, is definitely a community that is trying to be on the forefront of this kind of thing.
I really believe that infrastructure can be transformative in terms of creating the spaces for people to then live their lives. I think engineering and helping to design those things and care about them is truly beyond important, but like really valued. And I don't know that it's something within our culture that we sort of really think about very much.